Welcome to The Good Soul.
The Good Soul, hosted by Patty Alvarez, features real-world conversations that leave you feeling happy and rejuvenated.
The following is a paid program and does not necessarily reflect the views of WSIC.
Well, good afternoon, Lake Norman, and welcome to Town Talk. We're coming to you live from WSIC, the Real Talk Studio, nestled on the banks of beautiful Lake Norman, streaming worldwide from Mar-a-Lago, Florida, to Washington, D.C., population 6,708, 972 people. That's a lot of people. 678,972. I'm your host, Bill Russell, President of Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce, the largest chamber of commerce in the greater Charlotte region. My guest today is Andy Yates. He is the co-founder of Immyrse, the parent company of BehindRepublicanads.com and Public Affairs Partners, and Jeff Tarte, the 2024 board chair of Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce and former North Carolina Senator number 41. Your town, my town, our town. This is Town Talk, and you can reach us at 844-Studio-4 Live. Big night last night, Jeff. Big night.
Well, it sounds like you guys didn't go to bed at all either.
That's the reason I'm struggling with numbers. I was telling Andy I stayed up last night. Trump came on at 3:30, and I watched him for like 45 minutes and got to bed about 4 o'clock, and then it was kind of wound up. And then Andy just told me he was up to about 5 o'clock. And
I was so amped up from all of it, I thought, well, I can sleep till lunchtime, which I haven't done in years. I woke up at 7, wide awake, and didn't even need coffee somehow.
You felt like you were back in college.
Yeah, I was just completely amped up over everything. So then I just started digging into the numbers to look at the why, behind what happened, and checking on races that I never got to last night.
Well, we're going to answer those questions for you.
Well, for people who are listening to this or watching it, talk about, Andy, what you do, what your company does, so they'll understand a little bit about Andy Yates.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've worked in politics on the Republican side of the aisle for the last 22 years now. Spent 8 years working on campaign staff, about a decade as a general consultant, which is basically strategist for a campaign. Kind of think about like a general contractor, overseeing everything from the big picture. And then we started Republican Ads and Public Affairs Partners 5 years ago, which are programmatic digital advertising. We're the people behind all the digital ads you see, websites, apps, on streaming TV for Republican candidates, and then for issue groups, corporations, things like that have stuff on the center right side of the aisle to talk about. So that's so we're putting all this targeted advertising out there, deciding who gets what ad, what voters to focus on, how often they need to see it. All of that kind of fun stuff. So a lot of data and analysis goes into it. It's certainly not random, and it's changed a bunch over the last 22 years.
And Jeff, you're a 3-term mayor for the town of Cornelius and a 3-term senator for North Carolina District 41.
Correct.
And current board chair of the Chamber of Commerce.
Also correct. That's the shortest answers I will give the rest of the afternoon.
Andy, a week ago, would you have thought that Trump would sweep the battleground states, have this large of a lead? Right now, as we speak, he's at 301 to her 226. And again, if he takes everything else, we're talking about, 312 electoral votes. Did you see him, and taking the popular vote? I think he's the first Republican since 2000 to take the popular vote. Could you have seen that coming a week ago?
I could have saw 312 in the Electoral College. I did not necessarily see him winning the popular vote. I thought he had a chance to win it. I thought if he did, it would be much closer than it ended up being on the popular vote side. I think I think right now it's about I think he's got at least 5 million more votes than Kamala the last time I checked, which is impressive. I did not see that coming. Usually the swing states all break together. You don't always win all of them, but they all break in the same direction. So I thought that there was a decent chance that Trump could win, and sweep all the swing states. Michigan worried me the most of all of them. I thought there was a chance that, that Michigan was the biggest problem. I've been pretty confident for about 2 weeks that he'd sweep the 4 Sunbelt states since you started getting early vote numbers out of Nevada and mail votes out of Nevada, which were just they're states great about providing data several times a day and really detailed data on who's voted so far. And having that idea and getting some perspective from people that live and work Nevada politics. I saw that one coming, but Michigan was the one that worried me the most out of the seven.
Stepping back to January 6th, and I mean, you had some folks that call it an insurrection and some a riot, and some said, Trump actually instigated that, and I truly believe that he gave a speech and said, go down there and peacefully protest. I don't think he started a riot, but all that being said, the aftermath of that and the impeachment about surrounding that and the relationships that he had with his own cabinet, with his own people, he was rather toxic within the Republican Party. And could you have imagined that Donald Trump at that particular point in time would have resurrected this political career, fought through all of the indictments and everything else, and then had the kind of election that he had?
No, not at all. I think it's the most remarkable comeback story that you ever had in American politics, maybe in history, and maybe politics anywhere, maybe even outside of politics. It's pretty incredible how he's rehabilitated his image and been on the scene now he's been on the scene in America for 40 years, but he's been on the scene politically for the last decade, and is now more popular than he's ever been, and that's unusual.
Jeff, you are an elected, or were an elected official. What do you think about that?
I'm going to take a different slant and read on this as I step back and look at it. And I would say this is not an election that showed people embracing Donald Trump. I think this is a complete abject rejection of Biden and Harris policies. I think it's a demonstration when a group of people no longer listen to the general population, the working class, as everybody refers to it, and basically ignore them. Michigan and Pennsylvania makes absolute sense for a long time why it stayed away from the rhetoric and the policy directions of one side. Because let's take, first of all, Pennsylvania. Well, we want to eliminate fossil fuel completely. Well, that's an interesting thing to say in Pennsylvania. And then you turn around and you go, and by the way, we're going to kill and no longer manufacture gasoline engine and fossil fuel burning vehicles. Say that in Detroit. That went over really, really well.
Yeah. As we speak, pick up a couple more seats, I think, right?
Yeah, I think you can potentially get to 54 Republican senators. You've got standing right now on the Senate side. You've got still Pennsylvania, where I think they'll call Pennsylvania tonight. It's a half percentage point lead for McCormick with more than 95% of the vote in. You have 31,000 raw votes. They've called states closer than that earlier today. I think you'll get that one tonight. The one we're going to be waiting a while on, Sam Brown, which was a huge surprise. He was down double digits a week ago in polling, although turnout in Nevada was extremely high for Republicans. Right. He's up 0.5% in Nevada with 91% in, but they're one of those states like North Carolina used to be before we changed the
We're going to have to go. We'll be right back. We're going to go to our sponsors. We'll be right back. Stay with us on Town Talk. Sorry,
I was rolling. Sorry.
Yeah, you were rolling, but we were coming right to the end of that particular segment. But we want to get back to that comment in just a minute. For those who watch us social media, this is the time that we actually talk about some of the Chamber of Commerce activities. And Andy, we're going to go back to your thoughts in just a second about what's happening with the Senate. But we've got a big event coming up next Tuesday. We've got our foundation breakfast that's going to be taking place on November the 12th. That's going to be a breakfast that supports the Lake Norman YMCA pre- and after-school programs, and also the Cornelius Early Scholars. Again, 7:30 a.m. at the Peninsula Club. We're going to have a remote by WSIC. This is a program where we're going to give the net proceeds away to these two organizations, sponsored by our Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce Foundation. And, Jeff, you made an interesting comment when we had our recent public safety luncheon about why it was so important that we really focus in on early childhood education, and share with those listening why you think the chamber should be doing something like this.
Well, when I was in the Senate, actually, just in the beginning of it, I did my University of North Carolina University System tour. There are 16 universities in the system from across the state. I took the time to visit with the chancellors on their campuses. And one of the questions I asked, what are the indicators, or is there a singular indicator that you look for when you're looking to admit students from high school that would give you an idea or an inclination of that student's potential success if they were admitted? And unanimously, every single one, unprompted, unmentioned to them, had the exact same indicator. And they said, how much pre-K did that kid have? That blew me away.
We have that event coming up. We still have some tickets available. You can go to our website at LakeNormanChamberOfCommerce.org, and there's some sponsorship opportunities. We also had a fantastic business after hours last week. Pinnacle Financial Partners over in Brookdale Commons. That after hours taking place last Tuesday, and then this past weekend, Novant celebrated 20 years of having the hospital over in Huntersville. That was a really nice event.
Novant's been a great partner with the chamber, and they're such an asset.
Reese, we got about 20 seconds. All right. Well, thank you for staying with us on social media. We're going to go back live, and Andy, we're going to come back to you in just a second. Thank you for staying with us on Town Talk.
At renfestinfo.com while supplies last.
It's Town Talk with Lake Norman Chamber President Bill Russell on 105.9, 100.7 WSIC. Local starts here.
Welcome back to Town Talk. I have Andy Yates. He is the co-founder of Immyrse, the parent company behind RepublicanAds.com, and Jeff Tarte, the 2024 board chair of the chamber, but former North Carolina Senate number 41. Andy, before we went on break, and we got you on Zoom. You were traveling all over with some of the people you represent and on the trail, but we were talking about what's going on right now with the Senate. It looks like we could pick up a few more Senate seats. Talk to us about the House. Right now, we're at I think it's 210 versus 194 is where we're at right now. But talk to us about where you think the House will settle out at.
Yeah, I think Decision Desk HQ, which is, if you're not familiar with that, you're a political junkie like I am, is a great resource for tracking races and does a good job projecting based off election results and what's still out there. They have a 92.4% chance right now that Republicans take the Senate. That's been holding steady most of the afternoon, and they're projecting that we end up with 222 Republicans, 213 Democrats. I think that's plus three for Republicans where we are now, 9-vote majority. I think that's likely where it ends up. You could see some of these races are extremely close, and there's races in places like California with a lot of mail vote where you're not going to know. Washington State, same way, a lot of mail vote. There's 2 toss-up races there. You're not going to know who wins those races maybe till early December. And, depending on what's still out there, a couple of those could go either way. So it's going to, in my opinion, end up somewhere between 219 and 225 for Republicans. But there's still a slight chance the Democrats could take the House if everything broke in their direction.
When do you think we would know who's going to be controlling the House? When do you think that's going to happen definitively?
I think probably by the end of next week, but it could be Thanksgiving with some of these mail-in votes out in California, Washington State, some places like that where so much of the vote is by mail. You've also got 2 races that are toss-ups in Arizona, which takes forever to count their votes.
So that wouldn't be it's not that unusual that we're that far down the calendar before we know. And it's like Oregon. Oregon's 100% mail-in vote, and that was put in place by a Republican Secretary of State.
Yeah,
I mean, the Rocky Mountain West and Pacific West senator has embraced mail vote. It's interesting. The Republican states and the Democrat-leaning states and the toss-up states out there have all embraced vote by mail.
When Trump won in 2016, he had the presidency, but he also had the House and the Senate for 2 years. And of course, they didn't get anything accomplished. But I think a lot of that was because most people, except for Donald Trump, didn't think Donald Trump was going to get elected. So the House and the Senate didn't really think that they were going to be contending with anybody other than Hillary. So they didn't really have a plan to move forward some of the legislation that Trump tried to move forward. I mean, he just didn't have a plan. I think when he gets in there in January, you're going to have the House Speaker and whoever is going to be the Senate President. They're going to have their ducks in a row, and they're going to start moving forward on some legislation and some presidential directives.
I think you're right, Bill. I talked to a couple of folks down at Mar-a-Lago earlier today, a couple hours ago. They may have celebrated last night. They're not celebrating today. They've already moved on to planning for transition, planning inauguration, planning what's going to happen, first 100 days. I think you're going to see a very aggressive and different approach. And I also think that, what happened last time was you had a president who had never been involved in politics at all. So there was a learning curve there. And I think President Trump would tell you that there was a learning curve there for him to figure out how to navigate DC, the bureaucracy, Congress, congressional leadership, all of that. And there was a filling out period, I think, for congressional leadership with President Trump as well.
Well, we're going to see if the Republican Party has listened and learned, are going to replicate what the Democratic Party did when they said, we'll be unifiers, we'll get to business, and then turned around and started criticizing and slinging mud at everyone. So the question here is, did Trump and his staff listen? Economy. People want prices to come back in line.
Mm-hmm.
People want jobs. People want the border closed. In terms of immigration's great. We're a country founded on migration and immigration to our great country from all places. But it's real simple. You can come legally and you cannot come illegally. And we need to address that.
Amen. I think you see that first day. I think the executive order will be drawn up and written to start tackling immigration and issued the minute he gets sworn in.
Tax matters are important. The judicial appointments and vacated seats is an opportunity to put folks that are like-minded, and will focus on the everyday working person. That's got to be the focus.
Supreme Court justices, he put, what was it, three last time? How many did he have?
Yes, 3. Yeah.
Certainly Clarence Thomas is getting on up there.
He's 79.
Yeah, and I was thinking.
Zito is, I want to say 73, and then you have 2 justices, including John Roberts at 69.
You're in the ad business, Andy, and one of the ads that came popping up this past week was when you had Julia Roberts and who's the guy that from the ER show? George Clooney. Doing the ads of going to the voting booth and voting for Kamala because your husband won't know that you did, or your buddy won't know that you did. And it was sort of like, hey, let's be deceitful. Let's hide what we're doing. That struck me really, really bad. What was your feeling on that kind of advertising? What do you think about that?
I don't think it was effective. I think you're telling people something they already know. We know there's a secret ballot. I get what they were trying to go for there, but I think it was negative, and I think it pushed even more men to President Trump. I talked to several men who thought, man, these ads make it feel like that we're like evil, abusive people that make our wives vote the way we want them to vote, and that women get for themselves.
Well, it's an interesting perspective. I've heard people talk about that same topic, and it's like being tone deaf. You keep talking about supporting the average person that's out there, putting in 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, trying to make ends meet, get your kids to school, save for college and all this. And then you lean into multi-mega millionaires who jet around the world, who have no idea what reality is, probably haven't been in a grocery store or pumped gas in decades.
Have their own security.
And they're telling us what we need to do day to day. People basically ignore them now.
I was listening to some of the voting trends of who's voting for what, and as they're talking about it last night, how he's been able to peel off more African American men or more young people. This particular demographic went more for somebody else last time, but this time there was a lot of change, and he's bringing some new dynamics to the Republican Party.
He is. And the one to go back to what we were talking about with the women bill, I'm glad you brought up the changes with different groups. This one jumped out at me. I was looking at some exit polling from CNN preparing for this, and based off what we were hearing on the election, and even what I was seeing in polling on the election, this one shocked me. Trump did better with women yesterday overall than he did in 16 or 20. Hillary beat him by 13 with women. Biden beat him by 15 with women. Harris only beat him by 8 with women.
And I don't know the exact number of counties, Andy, and it'd be interesting to look at later. Just the number of counties he flipped that he lost to Biden, and he actually won. Didn't just make up ground, but actually won where he was down. I saw one county in Pennsylvania where he lost by 12 points last election. He won by 1.5 points. So that's almost a 14-point swing. And I'm not Hispanic. Obviously, my wife takes half of her practice is taking care of folks with that ethnic background. And they're basically ultimately really conservative by nature, fiscally responsible, strong faith backgrounds. If you at some point you just say, I'm going to look past the character. I mean, I think Biden and Trump both are not people I want my kids to grow up to be like. But now I'm going to look at policy and what impacts my pocketbook.
I think you're spot on. I mean, Latino men went for Trump by 12 points. 4 years ago, they went for Biden by 23 points. I mean, it's there's some stark changes here.
That's a radical swing.
Yeah, we're realigning, and I don't know if this held up over. I was not able to find this today. I don't know if it held up overnight, but as I was watching some of the coverage last night, it's probably around 11 or 12. So a lot of the results were in. They said this was a good chance once the final votes are tallied. Well, this will be the first election in American history where more Latinos or Hispanics voted than African Americans.
And this is the challenge to Trump. I'm going to keep harping on this. He has to not go do his natural proclivity to go attack his enemies and seek retribution. Forget those people and go govern and run this country and do the great things he did last time.
Absolutely. And the other thing, talking about the counties that all moved to Trump, this was going around on Twitter today. It's from Anderson Cooper on CNN last night, showed a map. He said he was going to show the map that showed counties where Kamala Harris improved over Joe Biden's performance in 2020. The map was completely white. At that point in the evening, there was not a single county in any of the 50 states where Kamala was doing better than Joe Biden.
Andy, we're going to go to a break in about 60 seconds, but I want to ask Jeff something because I heard on CBS this morning, they said it really came down to America's not ready to elect a woman. But I'm going to tell you something. If Condoleezza Rice had been on the ballot instead of Trump, or it had been Nikki Haley, and let's just say that she was the person that was on the ballot, I really do think that a Nikki Haley or a Condoleezza Rice would be the kind of candidate the Republicans put forward and could get elected.
Okay, I'm going to reveal something I was prepared to try to stay away from. I didn't vote for either one. I didn't vote for Trump and I didn't vote for Harris. I voted and wrote in Condoleezza Rice.
Well, we're gonna go to a break after hearing that the former North Carolina senator didn't vote for the Republican candidate. So we're going to go to a break. We'll be right back. Stay with us on Town Talk. We're back on our social media, and I tell you, Jeff, I'm a huge fan of Condoleezza Rice. I always have been. I think she's one of the most talented ladies, tremendous international perspective, brilliant person. I think she hands down would be an excellent president.
Like I said, I voted for her for president. So I kind of agree with you. It got to me. The reason I didn't vote for Trump is because at some point you got to stand on your principles. And I've said it needs to be somebody of character, integrity, and somebody you trust implicitly. He doesn't meet that litmus test for me. Flip side, there's no possible way I could vote for a far less extremist policy. I can't support a government or a group of people who think they know better and they should take care of you versus individual accountability of the other side.
And I would probably be a winning bet if I said that you probably voted for the winner of the governor's race as well.
Actually, I did, and I'll let you in on one more secret. This speaks to his integrity and character. We disagree on a lot of policies. Josh called me on Saturday, and he's asked me, which I will do, is I'm part of the governor-elect's transition team.
Yeah, I knew you were very close to Josh Stein.
Nice.
Well, he's looking for people, the best. So I asked the governor-elect 2 questions. I said, does everybody have to come from in-state?
Right.
And does everybody have to come from your party? And he paused for about 2 seconds and said, absolutely not. Let's find the best people that have the qualifications to do the best job. That was amazing.
Mm-hmm. How much time we got, Bill? We got 90 seconds. Okay. Yeah, I kind of felt like that's the way you were going to go on that particular thing. You and I talked about it.
But my lieutenant governor candidate lost, and a few others down. I'm pretty strong conservative values.
Did that surprise you about the lieutenant governor?
Not exclusively.
Al Weatherman?
I think the top of the ticket statewide hurt him a little bit, getting tied to Mark.
And Dan Bishop, did that surprise you at all?
Dan, I thought would actually have been closer, candidly. But I tell you, Jeff Jackson's a marketing and social media rock star.
But we haven't really, I don't think we've elected a Republican attorney general in 100 years, have we?
No, it's always been D.
Yeah.
I would say, I mean, in inside or outside of North Carolina, I don't even know who did Attorney General-elect Jackson's ads. They were the best political ads I saw this cycle.
No question. But we've got some really strong people serving in Council of State. Dave Bollick at the state auditor is, I think, going to be just a superstar. And I ran against him in the primary, and he's one of the hardest campaigners that's on. Mike Causey is going to do a great job, particularly considering who he was running against.
Natasha Marcus, yeah.
Well, the least liked person for 3 terms. She ranked 50th out of 50 senators every term.
And on that note, we're going to go back live here. So thank you for staying with us on social media.
Coli outbreak related to onions on quarter pounders. I'm Nancy Lyons, Bloomberg Radio.
It's Town Talk with Lake Norman Chamber President Bill Russell on 105.9, 100.7 WSIC. Local starts here.
Welcome back to Town Talk. I have Jeff Tarte, the 2024 board chair of the Chamber of Commerce, former North Carolina Senate number 41, also former mayor of Cornelius, and not opinionated at all.
Not at all.
Andy Yates, the co-founder of Immyrse, the parent company behind RepublicanAds.com and Public Affairs Partners. We were talking about some of the things going on and some of the issues. One of the other things that struck me is this whole lawfare. This guy has we started with Charlottesville, then he went through all the impeachments, and then it was the Russiagate, and the man has battled and battled and battled, and then it was the series of these lawsuits against him and indictments, and even today, Letitia James, the New York Attorney General, because I had heard that some of these things would probably just go away now. I mean, I'm one of those that I really truly believe that if this was any other individual, they would not have pursued these things. This was to keep Donald Trump from being president. Now he's president. You can't keep him from that. So I assumed it was going to be dropped. But sounds like Letitia James is still going to move forward as a attorney general and going to pursue that law, that indictment. Is that what you're hearing up there, Andy?
Hey, that would not surprise me. I mean, and the funny part is, Bill, I mean, this is the epoxy of all of it. There's a great clip of her that was going around on X at the Al Smith dinner, just cracking up and smiling at President Trump's jokes.
Do you think some people, though, were just totally turned off by the fact that they were really throwing these charges up against him left and right?
Absolutely. I think that had something to do with Trump winning. I do think there were people that were motivated by that. I also know, I know some people personally that I've talked to who aren't typical voters, don't always vote presidential elections. And that was one of the things that motivated them to get out and vote. I think it hurt the Democrats more than it helped. And I think it also totally discredited, without Trump even really having to call it out, totally discredited Kamala attacking Trump is going to spend the next 4 years trying to seek retribution and prosecute his political enemies. Well, pardon my French, but what in the hell has Joe Biden done for the last 4 years and Kamala Harris but try to prosecute and seek retribution against Donald Trump and all of their minions from D.C. to Atlanta to New York?
I'll go one step further and say any party that continues to engage in lawfare and using the DOJ and the justice system as a way to try to basically corner your opponent and try to delegitimize them, you will not win an election ever again. One of the major reasons that Harris and Walz lost, absolutely embarrassment. And if Trump does it, he's going to get his lunch handed to him. So hopefully he stays away. He's been watching it done to him. Don't turn around and do it again to somebody else.
You know, you talked about being tone deaf, and there's been some issues that's just kind of been under my skin. One of them is the biological men playing in women's sports, which I think is just unfair. I think it's tremendously unfair to these young ladies who have worked as kids, you know, from the time they're 5 years old, 3 years old, to try to train to have an opportunity at scholarships, that the scholarships are taken away, the records are taken away by these men competing in these women's sports, and it's inherently unfair, particularly things like swimming or diving, you know, things of that nature. The transgender reassignments in prison and spending tax money on that. The border, that's the big one that just seemed like that the Biden administration was totally tone deaf on the whole border issue. How much of that played into this?
I don't know. And I have to be careful. I mean, woke from its original meaning, being engaged, knowledgeable, involved, is an important aspect, but it's been hijacked, and the woke agenda, as we understand it today, has problems, and people are getting tired of it. I think, you know, the whole LGBT community does not need to be discriminated against. Needs to be, they're human beings. They're entitled to all the rights and protections of every one of us. But the transgender population is 0.5% of the entire population. The LGBTQ community is approximately 5%. You cannot stay engaged and your whole focus be on 0.5% of your electoral base. It's not a winning proposition, period. But we all need to love and hug. We're all human beings. Let's treat everybody like human beings.
Sure. Another of the, you know, I'm talking about how much I love the Jeff Jackson ads. But one of the other best ads I would say I saw this cycle was it was very simple ad. It was on the whole transgender sports thing. I don't even remember which candidate. Now, this may discredit that a little bit because I don't remember who the negative ad was against. It was not North Carolina, but the ad was a female athlete who had been severely injured playing soccer by a transgender. And it started out with a clip of the injury, and then it cut to her to camera talking about how it changed her opinion on the issue. I think it was for Trump. But anyway, it was her to camera. It was very powerful. And I mean, the hit on that was one of those where it like turned your stomach. You didn't want to see it. If it had happened in a NFL game, it's one of those where they go, I'm not going to show you the replay. That's too bad to watch.
You know, there's people you look at that speak out and have been excellent in their sport and have, you know, the LGBT background. But Martina Navratilova is one of my all-time favorite players. She's a lesbian. You know, not like in your face with it, but she'll tell you right up front. She'll get in your face about transgender men playing, and there's no place for it. I mean,
this issue.
It's unfair competition. It's inappropriate.
You know, we talked about some of the endorsements from various people. Some of the ones that came out in support of Trump, though, I felt like, wow, what a win when Tulsi Gabbard, you know, switched from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party and then came out supporting Donald Trump. When Robert Kennedy Jr., which I'm a huge fan of the Kennedy family. I mean, John Kennedy, I was a kid when John Kennedy was president. Bobby Kennedy, I've always been tremendous fans of theirs. And RFK Jr. Getting on board the Trump campaign. And then Elon Musk. I mean, no question, one of the greatest business minds of our time, you know, and jumping on board the Trump train. I just thought that those were huge momentum, created the momentum for Donald Trump.
I mean, what about and talk about Megyn Kelly? I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, she was one of the most outspoken anti-Trump Republicans when he first came on the scene, and she gave the closing argument speech at
Right.
the Grand Rapids rally. And I mean, I had several people come up to me that had seen that speech and go, "Man, I wish she'd done that months ago, so they could have put it in a commercial." I mean, it was great, and a lot of things have happened in this election that I didn't think I would see, but the one I would have bet a lot of money up until a year ago that I thought I would never see and experience was being in a rally, which I was at last night, in a room full, thousands of Republicans, and they start chanting RFK, RFK.
Well, and you talk about this campaign. All right, you think about it. 2 assassination attempts on Donald Trump. The guy who he was running against and even went to a debate with, then bows out, and you put in somebody else, substitute them in without even having a primary on that particular person. I mean, you think of all the things that happened during this campaign and this election that's just never happened before, and the fact of him coming back again as that candidate that we talked about January 6th. We would have never ever have thought that he would be back, and he takes over and goes all the way to the top and runs the table.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it unprecedented election. I mean, so many things happened. Big things like the 2 assassination attempts, the horrible Biden debate performance, Biden dropping out, but also little things in the numbers that you just wouldn't believe they're historic. I mean, I touched on one of them. It may very well, once we see the final turnout data, be the very first election where Latino make up a larger vote share than blacks do. And a lot of just history-making things that happened in this election, a lot of unprecedented, and it's going to take, for people like me that analyze this stuff, plus your historian class, it's going to take months, if not a year or two, to wrap your mind around everything that happened in this election and decide, one, how our country lines up politically. There's definitely realignment going on. But what lessons, what are the lessons to take away from this election? It's going to take a while to really drill down into that.
Well, one of them is the age-old tactic that you accuse your opposition of something all the time, and then you go do it, and you get away with you doing it. And I'll give you 2 examples. Telling everybody that the Republican Party is dead, that it's a small tent. No, you just named a very big tent. And you go in and say, well, democracy is going to be at risk. Well, democracy was challenged when you take somebody who has not received 1 vote from a person in a primary election to nominate you to be your party's designation. And you take that away from the person who was elected by a few power brokers within your party and pull that to give it to somebody else. I mean, that is the ultimate, one of the first steps of taking away and changing our constitutional republic.
Andy, we've got only about a minute before we go to a sponsor break. But when we get back, I want to talk to you also about the mainstream media because, again, anybody that's been watching ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, CNN, it tells one side of the story, and it was almost overwhelmingly negative to Donald Trump and overwhelmingly positive to Kamala Harris. And I want to get your take on where you think mainstream media is going to be, because did the public really just turn it off and just say, I'm not listening to that anymore? So I want to get your perspective on that. And Jeff, when we come back, also I want to talk to you about what's happened and do a deep dive on what's happening here locally. So we'll be right back on Time Talk. For those of you on social media, thanks for staying with us. Earlier today, we had a ribbon cutting, November the 6th, at Davidson Periodontics over in Davidson on South Main Street. They've been around for a while, but they just, the original guy just took on a partner and changed their name to Davidson Periodontics. And welcome to the Chamber of Commerce. We're also tomorrow, Thursday the 7th, 8:30 to 10 o'clock, we're having a coffee connection at a Shade Above, which is right behind the Chamber of Commerce here in Cornelius. And then later on in the afternoon, actually 11:30 to 1, we're going to have a lunch and learn on data-driven advertising. So something right up your alley there, Mr. Yates.
Yes.
again, a lot of networking opportunities the Chamber of Commerce puts forward. You've been the chamber chair for 2024, Jeff. What are some of the things that you think that we've accomplished this year that you're most proud of?
Well, I think, that would take a little bit of time reflecting. The thing that's interesting with the chamber people don't realize is the breadth and depth of programming that we do. I mean, we have literally hundreds of activities and things to engage our businesses. One of the biggest things, I think, is just the interaction between the business owners and the community. That if you have an issue and you're not sure how to address it, you've got people you can lean into that will mentor you, help you, and walk you through those issues. Across from being, whether you're an atrium or an Ovand as a hospital system, and you're just a small care provider that's in the community, whether you're a small business owner and doing a repair shop and you want to interact with the larger automobile dealerships, they all work together. It's impressive. And they all recognize you've been, and since we got a second, is to recognize that you've been a huge advocate and force for business as a voice and as the chamber, how important it is to connecting all of us.
Well, it's been real fortunate to be a part of this and been a great run with so many folks, and I want to thank you for your leadership this year.
Well, the burning question we've got, though, right now in the community is, where do you want your 35-foot bronze statue placed in the town?
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll not go there. Okay, for those of you with social media, we're going back live for the last segment, and thank you for staying with us on Town Talk.
Only at renfestinfo.com while supplies last.
Call now to speak with Lake Norman Chamber President Bill Russell at 844 Studio 4. It's Town Talk on 1059, 100.7 WSIC.
Okay, we're back on Town Talk, and we're doing a deep dive on yesterday's election. We've been spending a lot of time talking about Trump and Kamala, but now we're going to really talk about what happened here at the lake. And I'm here with Andy Yates. He's the co-founder of Immyrse, the parent company behind RepublicanAds.com, and Jeff Tarte, former senator, North Carolina District Number 41. Any surprises that you saw? I mean, yesterday we had a big race, the District 98 race. Melinda Bales, Beth Helfrich. Beth was able to win that, a couple thousand votes. Did that surprise you?
A little bit. I mean, Melinda has infinitely more experience than Beth does. Beth's been a lifelong member of the community, business owner, her family. She's bright, talented, articulate person, so not a complete shock. I think you look up and down the ticket at General Assembly, looking at all those races. We've got a lot of really good people. We got some first-time folks coming back. People need to understand that the General Assembly is the source of power in the state of North Carolina. It's a weak governor structure, like a lot of our weak mayor structures in our municipalities. Phil Berger, unequivocally, is the most single powerful elected official in the state of North Carolina. So can the new administration figure out how to work with that General Assembly? Governor-elect Stein was a senator for multiple terms, so he's been inside the chamber, knows how it works. That could work to his advantage. But it's it's like anything else, whether it's your marriage or business, serving an elected office, it's all about relationships.
You saw you're keeping her seat at District 37?
Yeah, that's a positive. That doesn't surprise me. I'm surprised anybody even thought that was anything to worry about. She's a real solid elected official, and she should be there as long as she wants to serve.
Andy?
One thing on the Bales Helfrich race that stood out to me looking at the results this morning, Mayor Washman and I were texting back and forth about it, and I looked at the results by precinct and noticed I knew that I-77 splits that district, but one of the interesting things was how different east and west of I-77 are and how they voted. Melinda Bales won every precinct west of 77 except for one, and it was basically tied. Helfrich barely won it. Helfrich won every precinct east of 77 except for one, Huntersville Elementary, and it was pretty much tied. Mm-hmm. That shocked me that one side of the interstate or the other, the politics is so different up here now.
Andy, do you have any idea how many people voted on the Davidson campus? How many students voted?
I do not know how many students voted, but Davidson had extremely high turnout. And I mean, I did have the numbers written down earlier, but I don't have them with me, or I actually texted them to Woody. I think Helfrich won by about 2,200 votes, and she carried the main in-town Davison precinct by about 2,100 votes.
A big target the Democrats were also going after was Tricia Cotham. Right now, she is almost dead even. She's got a slight advantage over her opponent. I think she holds less than 100 votes, I think. But probably about a week before we know the results of that one. Any surprise there, Jeff?
No, because the Dems spent a pile of money to take her seat away for switching parties. There are actually a handful of races throughout the state, though, that are small vote counts. And that's not unusual for a given election either. I've seen, 9, 10, 36, vote wins in House and seats. So and even in the Senate seat, Bill Cook a few years ago won by 36 votes. Not completely unusual.
Any judicial seats that you were pleased to see?
Well, what I'd like to see is more people be willing to step up and run. And I think it's important for us to recognize and say thank you, regardless of party, for those that ran and didn't win, for being engaged. And here's your challenge. Don't walk away and go home and forget to go ahead and get involved. Volunteer, get involved in a campaign. Go volunteer on a staff. Go get involved in a community committee. People still need your voice and input. Stay engaged.
Mecklenburg County continues to be blue. It's going in terms of the county commission.
That won't change. As I said, if people understand, if voting patterns stay generally the same nationally, and we eliminated the Electoral College and we went to simply popular vote, 5 counties, not states, 5 counties would determine and select the president of the United States. The Electoral College serves an absolute purpose to give every state an equal voice. Otherwise, you would disenfranchise basically 70 or 80% of the entire electorate.
Jeff, one of the things the Chamber of Commerce doesn't do is we don't endorse or support candidates for office, but we do believe in the principles of good government, and we had a candidate forum that we had the District 98 seat participate in. But we also came out in support of the Cornelius Park bonds, which were approved yesterday.
$20 million. So that will go to good use. You would think $20 million is a pile of money, and in one respect it is. But just put this in perspective, 1 mile of greenway, just 1 mile costs $1 million to construct and put in place. So they want to do, I think, a lot of active things. I know this coming weekend, they're sponsoring a soccer tournaments, and we do things like bass tournaments and all kinds of things. The soccer tournament, I got 2 nephews coming from Atlanta to Cornelius to play in a regional soccer tournament. That's pretty cool.
While the Chamber Board of Directors came out unanimously in favor of the park bonds, why is park bonds and Cornelius Parks important for business?
Well, because let's take the tournament. If you have 100 teams with 25 people, families coming in, think of the hotels, think of the restaurants. It is an amazing financial impact immediately for a local area to be able to host, travel tournament type of athletic events. That's just one example.
Andy, one of the things that you do with us every other year, we put together the Lake Norman Institute of Political Leadership. We had a great program a year ago. This coming year in 2025, we will again kick that back off for anyone who's interested in running on whether they're Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, whether they're running for a local house, doesn't matter, whatever seat they want to run for. We'll be putting that program together, and you were very active last time in helping us put that together.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things that I get to do in the community, in the chamber. We always have a good group of folks, and it's interesting. You get a mix of people who definitely want to run for office, and then you get the people who just want to learn more about politics, how campaigns work, and probably have no interest in running for office. So it's fun to see the mix of folks and give them a taste for, how campaigns really work. I mean, I think Senator Tarte can speak to this, looking at it from the outside, how you think campaigns work and how glamorous you think they are, or maybe think they are. It's not what it is once you get in there. It's completely different than what, somebody looking at the outside thinks it is when they come. And, I think it's important to get that training, because we need good candidates on both sides of the aisle to talk about the important issues facing the Lake region.
And I think we've had in the past some just outstanding professors that spoke on topics like ethics and things like that were.
And that would be who, Jeff?
I can't remember, but I just remember it was fascinating and brilliant.
When you went to Raleigh as a senator, you were in the majority, so you weren't. I remember Jim Puckett telling me how difficult it was when he served on the Mecklenburg County Board of County Commissioners. He was the only Republican commissioner, and how difficult and challenging that was. Okay, we have a District 98 representative, Beth Helfrich. We again, extremely talented, very, very intelligent lady, but she's going to go up there and she's going to be in the minority. How effective do you think Beth's going to be able to be in the next 2 years?
It depends on how she approaches the position and what she's trying to accomplish. If she thinks she's going to bring back, great funds and pass projects and do social justice things, she will be completely ineffective. But I think Beth is smart enough to recognize what has to be different. And it's, again, building relationships. And I'll give you one example. Don Davis, who is now in Congress, served from the Greenville area, Democrat. I served within the Senate. I remember 2 days where every single bill we ran on the floor was a Don Davis sponsored bill. And like the second bill on day 2, we stand up and go, oh, what's going on? This shouldn't be happening, sort of. And then you stop and realize, and we look at the material, the bills that he's moving forward, deal with military families, deal with small businesses, stay out of the antagonistic social justice things that are contentious. Those issues are what we tend to vote down party lines. Take care of business, take care of your constituency, do things that appeal or are important to everybody. He was extremely successful.
Right. Andy, I want to go back, and before we went on break, I was telling you that if you've been watching the news and you watch ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, the perspective that they have had regarding Donald Trump for the last, eons, pretty much since he went down the escalator. But do you think any of that changes now? Because I think by and large, the General Electric just turned it off. They just didn't take their P's and Q's from the media.
I think you're absolutely right about that, Bill. I mean, we've got a fragmented and rapidly changing news media, whatever you want to call it, ecosystem out there. And people get their news from so many different places. They're looking to so many different things. I mean, there are more people. I quit tracking the Joe Rogan Trump interview when it hit 40 million people having watched it. More people watch Joe Rogan than watch the nightly news each week than watch ABC, CBS, and NBC nightly news combined. The news organizations and nightly news still have a place, yes. Do they help drive the narrative and what people talk about? Yes, but they don't have the influence they do. And the more they try to put the finger on the scale, the more people resent it, the less influence they're going to have. And I'm not sure if they are willing to admit that. I think they may just be too stubborn to change on that stuff. And I think you may see it become more opinionated.
We're coming up against the end of the show. I want to thank both of you for being on today. And I want to leave you with a quote from Christine Kane. She said, to build a strong team, you must see someone else's strengths as a complement to your weaknesses and not a threat to your position or your authority. So I want to thank that. If it's Wednesday afternoon, we're talking about our towns on Town Talk on WSIC. We'll see you next week.
Something looking better, baby, to pass it through.
Serving you better than ever before. WSIC, Statesville, W290DK Morrisville, W264C